Good evening. Our top story this week. In Tennessee, the child protective industry is fighting to keep all of their records regarding the deaths of children in state care a secret so they can continue to hide all of their failures. While in California, a judge rebukes the state's child welfare agency for failing to disclose facts relating to the deaths of children in state care, then rules that records regarding the kids who died from abuse and neglect should be made public, for without them it would be impossible to make necessary reforms that could prevent more child deaths in the future. In Illinois, the child protective industry is taking so many kids that they are being forced to stay in temporary children's shelters for extended periods of time, which is in violation of a 30-day limit from a federal consent decree. In Arizona, the National Association of Social Workers is concerned about the well-being of kids in the state's child welfare system after they were caught placing foster kids in a polygamist enclave in Colorado City. And the Arizona child protective industry clarifies a rule that bans foster care providers from having unvaccinated bio children. In Florida, parents of disabled children are blasting the state's child welfare system after budget cuts result in less necessary care provided for the kids. Florida is also still trying to figure out what to do about all of the unlicensed and unregulated group homes in the state where kids have been sent to be abused for years. In Kansas, a private agency loses its $20 million a year contract to provide child welfare services in the state, but says that they will still provide foster homes. In Kentucky, a state Senate committee hears complaints about how Child Protective Services isn't doing enough to protect children. In Maine, the government issues a curtailment order which could cut the rates paid to foster parents, causing lawmakers to fear that foster parents would no longer want to adopt all of the kids they've been snatching. The school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut is prompting calls for mental health reform. And in Texas, a judge rules that a school can force students to wear locator chips while on school grounds. In New York this week, a couple is accused of abusing a Russian child who they adopted, as a U.S. Senate resolution condemns the new Russian adoption ban, while some wannabe parents who were in the process of adopting a Russian kid vows to fight on despite the ban. In China, an orphanage vows to stay open after a fire killed 8 people who were living there, 7 of which who were children, as China's government tries to get a handle on child welfare by reining in all of these unlicensed children's homes. And in South Africa, kids who are living in juvenile detention facilities are still living in poor conditions despite a dramatic decrease in the numbers. In Canada, a foster mother from Saskatchewan goes on trial for criminal negligence in the drowning death of a 22-month-old foster child. The deaths of Manitoba's children who are stuck in the child welfare system are up over the last year, according to a new report by the province's children's advocate. And the sentencing begins for a Nova Scotia foster mother who starved a little girl in her care. In England, Sharon Shoesmith, the former head of Haringey Council who oversaw the child protective industry during the Great Baby P failure of 2008, says that kids are in even more danger now than before the fiasco. The British government is talking about implementing a new computer database to keep track of kids who go to the hospital and share child protective information with healthcare providers. British police are investigating the deaths of 2 social workers, one of whom was retired, the other who was praised by the child protective industry. And a watchdog group is warning that the British government's latest plans for secret courts are incompatible with the Human Rights Act and common law's rights to fair trials. Researchers have found that British social workers who get too emotionally involved in their cases risk burnout, but those who fail to get emotionally involved risk alienating their clients, as a new toolkit for social workers in training is revealed to help them manage their emotions more effectively. The poor things. A senior child protection figure is warning against budget cuts and welfare benefits changes, saying that cutting people off will likely result in more children being snatched from their parents and thrown into foster care. England still has 6,000 children who they want to adopt out. In sports this week, the maternal and paternal grandparents are fighting for custody of a baby left behind by a Kansas City Chiefs player who killed the mother before taking his own life. In Connecticut, a gay couple is accused of sexually assaulting the children who they adopted and will likely face no jail time for it. A Connecticut social worker is accused of failing to report sexual abuse of a child and refusing to cooperate with a police investigation. In Florida, the state rests in a murder trial of a woman who was accused of killing a foster kid who disappeared 10 years ago. An ex-inmate who was hoping for a reduced jail sentence lied, as it turns out, by concocting a story about the girl's former caretaker confessing to killing the child, and the judge refuses to acquit the foster mother who was accused of her murder. In Ohio, a man pleads no contest to raping a child just before his trial was set to begin, where the adoptive father, who was serving 60 years for raping 3 boys in his care, was set to testify. In Oklahoma, a couple pleads not guilty to abusing their adopted kids. In Pennsylvania, a former CPS agent pleads guilty to growing pot in her home. And in California, a father takes takes a stand against the state's alleged LGBT agenda in the classroom, suggesting that the schools are becoming re-education camps because of an excessive focus on gay issues. In New York, a former foster kid is getting kicked out of his apartment complex after the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development pulls the funding. In North Carolina, the child protective industry decides to place an 8-year-old into the care of his uncle, who is a convicted felon, without doing a comprehensive background check first. In Oregon, an attorney is seeking $500,000 from the state in a lawsuit that alleges that a boy was sexually abused while in foster care. In Texas, a judge rules that a boy who was kidnapped 8 years ago can finally get out of foster care and go live with his siblings. And finally, tonight, an Amber Alert is issued for a little girl from Texas who was taken by a man who was pretending to be a CPS agent. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.